Good morning. Happy Friday. My name's Nancy McSherry Jensen. I'm here with my business partner, Sarah Denwald. We run the Swing Shift. This is our weekly Hangout Habits call. This is intended to get you into the practice of getting a consistent job search process moving forward. So every week we have a rotating slate of speakers and topics. This week we've got, and I put the wrong title on here, we have Aisha Losche, who's the Senior Vice President of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at Hill Holiday out in Boston, talking with us about transitioning corporate cultures towards inclusion. First, a couple of things. We do have an accountability community here at the Swing Shift. If you are looking for some assistance in moving your job search forward, we have a great cohort of folks that are working on everything from discernment to their tools to getting ready to interview and negotiate. We just kicked that off this week. If you are looking for help with LinkedIn and personal brand, we have some video on demand workshops. You can go to our website. And we are tickled to tell you that our book and e-course called Back to Business is available now. So if you're thinking about making a move, either going back to work or switching roles or careers, we've got a couple of really accessible ways to do that. You can go to backtobusinessbook.com or you can go to our website, theswingshift.co. That's enough about us. This morning, I am delighted to welcome Aisha Losche. She is the Senior Vice President of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion at Hill Holiday, which is a major advertising, marketing, and communications firm based on the East Coast. Aisha started her career in program management. And then over time, she's transitioned into an HR and now a diversity, equity, and inclusion role. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But this morning, we're really going to talk about how companies can make a valid and meaningful switch into an inclusive culture. And that's what she's really spent the last few years of her career working on. So I'm going to turn my slides off so that you can focus on Aisha. Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see you. How are you?
Very well, very well. We met a couple of years ago during a corporate engagement, and as we were saying to Sarah in the prep, we bonded over being from the South Shore of Boston, which some of you know is where I am from. So recently, Aisha, you transitioned from working at the Publicist Group, which is where you and I met, to Hill Holiday, and now can you talk a little bit about what you have direct responsibility for?
Absolutely. So yeah, I was working with Publicist Group for many years in various roles, as you mentioned. So when you think about career shifting, I worked in immigration, I've worked in resource management, I've worked in training and development. So it was definitely a swing. And then my last role was directly tied to diversity and inclusion
Right.
across the US. So what I'm doing now at Hill Holiday is I have direct purview into our programs, into our strategy. Excuse me, a little frog in my throat this morning.
It's that -6 wind chill. Yes.
Exactly. It is. It's creeping in through the windows. So I'm responsible for helping craft our strategy, our programming, our BRGs, and helping our talent really just grow within the ED&I space. They had started this work before I've gotten there, but I'm really excited to kind of be settling in 2021 and furthering that along for everyone.
Yeah. And so you, as part of your move, this is a relatively new role for you. You went from really a multinational organizational role, right? Publicists is all over the world, to a very well-regarded practice, but your role is different. What predicated that move for you? So we're going to talk a little about your shift, and then we're going to talk about culture shift.
Sure, absolutely. So for me, yes, I was, responsible for ED&I for about 22,000 odd folks with multiple different agencies at the center of, a holding company,
Right.
a French holding company. So, as you mentioned, so it was just a different purview. We were able to partner in practice, but I wasn't able to kind of have that direct talent line that I was hoping to have that I've had in previous roles where,
Right.
you know, when you're in resource management and you have your pod of PMs and technologists, you get to know each and every person. And it was very hard to get to know 22,000 people at once. So I was
Right.
really excited to have the opportunity to join Hill Holiday and really get to know the business, their people, and have that one-on-one connection to help grow and build up our capability and capacity in the ED&I space.
Yeah. One thing, and you and I have talked about this previously, can you talk about impact and reach and influence? People talk, impact is something that a lot of folks talk about, particularly when you're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about your impact at Hill Holiday, and then what are the factors that contribute to an impactful change?
Well, luckily, I have joined a team that, especially at the executive level, that has completely aligned to this work. And so, coming in, we're all working together to, with the talent and the leadership, to build something that's going to be meaningful and long lasting and systematic in the change. It can't. It's nothing that will be. You know, influencer bound, if you will, where it's a
Yes.
post or something that's a catchy phrase. We all know that the work has to be done at the ground level. So looking at our practices, our policies, our recruiting, and really breaking it down and seeing where there's some blockages or where we can enhance. So it's really important for if folks want to have impact in this type of work, you have to go beyond kind of just thinking about it, you know, from an external perspective, and really taking a look inwardly and doing the work at home, if you will,
Yes.
before you really kind of go out and post, you know, the black squares, because talent is really savvy these days. They are willing to ask really tough questions, and so, you know, the performative or things of that nature won't last. So we're really looking to have that impact in making those longer term changes versus having, you know, there's always going to be some quick hits, but you know that's not
Sure.
the way to solve the overall problems that we're seeing in the industry.
Yeah, and you mentioned the talent being increasingly savvy. Many of the people that we work with really want to keep DEI in their sights. It's super important. If you've taken a break and you're going to go back, you want to make sure that the values match and that it's a meaningful role. So, can you talk a little bit about what some of the signifiers are you people should look for beyond some photos and, as you say, the black squares on Instagram and on a website? What are some things they can look for that show a true commitment to diversifying a company's workforce?
You know, when you're in the interview process, it's definitely an interview of the company as well. So coming in and after doing the research, asking them how they've supported talent through the crisis, right? We've
Right.
been living through a triple pandemic for many months,
Right.
soon to be a year. So asking a question like that will help you understand how they value their talent. If they said that we got Zoom and that
Hmm.
was their investment in their talent, it's probably not a right fit for you if that's not something that is meaningful enough for you. Asking about their business resource groups and employee resource groups and how they've been engaged throughout the process and how they've been able to be participants in the solutions and fixing things from an agency perspective. So it's really asking those types of questions. And, you know, for me specifically, Black talent is something that's very important to me as being a Black talent.
Sure.
But even for those who are allies and want to understand, you know, what have you been doing for diverse communities? How accessible is this space here? If I have a disability, what can I do to get support? So really just asking those types of questions will help you understand and get a gauge on how serious an organization may be on their commitment to diversity and inclusion going forward.
Yep. One question. Oh, go, Sarah. You go ahead.
Aisha, you mentioned the research that a person needs to do as they're interviewing with a company. Can you drill down on that a little bit and talk about maybe some resources of where they should go do their research and what should they be looking for in that research?
Absolutely. And I know the Swing Shift does a great job of providing a lot of those resources for folks to dive into. I remember when we worked together, I was in awe and took notes of like, oh, pace, there's like a ton of different places to go. But, really just looking at their websites, checking out some, Glassdoor is still a great resource to kind of hear from the people directly, to see what they're thinking. Check out their Instagram, their social posts, just really kind of get a feel for who they are. And then even as you're talking to the recruiter or, the recruiting coordinator, just just the sense for how they're treating you and how they value your time is also another way to kind of gauge what's going on at an agency. So definitely, do your Google searches as you would, and talk to people and look at your LinkedIn connections. I definitely have received some notifications of, hey, I know you've worked here in the past. Can you give me some insights? And people are pretty honest, so that's also a helpful tool to just have one-on-one conversations with people who may have left their networks, are now alumni or currently work there, that you might be able to have a second or third connection with and ask those types of questions.
I love
I,
that.
I I had a follow-on question. So if you're going in and you know that diversity, equity, and inclusion is really important to you, some candidates that we've talked to about this mentioned that they don't want to rock the boat when in asking those questions. And what's your perspective on that?
Rocket, the boat has to
Right.
be rocked. This is where we are in the process,
Yes.
is disruption, and understanding and really taking a hard look. So if you've done your research and they have had, a statement on their website, ask about the statement. That's kind of a safe place
Yes.
to start if you feel very uncomfortable. It's like, I've noticed you made this pledge for, diversity and inclusion. Can you help me understand how that's lived in action through your culture? That's a
Right.
very great question to start with. But we've lost plenty of years, decades, centuries on kind of being polite and not rocking the
Right.
boat. And I think recruiters have been prepared, and hiring managers, that this is the types of questions that our talent are going to be asking. So they've been prepping, those folks to be ready for those types of questions. And I think it's only going to help you. And it's only going to help you in your interview process. If you don't feel like you can ask that kind of question, is that a place you're really going to want to work?
Right.
And so it's really something that you should go, full board and ask those kind of questions and see what they give you back. And if it doesn't feel right, then perhaps it might not be an organization for you, because you want to be happy at work. You want to feel like
Right.
there's going to be progress, and you want it to align with your values. And if it's not right, then you're not going to last there.
And let's talk a little bit, thank you, because I think many, many people worry about this. And I want to talk a little about that value alignment. So w- the research will give you some information. And when are companies faking it and they're just making a performative effort? And are there any tells? Like when you're playing cards and you can go, oh, Nancy has no poker face. With companies, are there
Yeah.
things where you go, okay, it's nice that you're saying that, but you're not really doing anything?
Yeah, it's going back to those probing questions. If you notice on their Instagram that, last June, I believe they posted a black square. And then now, we just had Dr. Martin Luther King Day last week and they posted that, but there was nothing in between.
Mhm.
If they don't have some type of outward statement, and also if you do kind of ask those questions of the recruiter in the onset and they don't have an answer, they're faking it.
Yeah.
And it's something that you're going to be mindful of, because you want your employer to be, action oriented and solution oriented when it comes to this. It's a long process.
Yes.
But if you just kind of feel around and it seems very high level or very vague, ask those probing questions to kind of get to what they were trying to get to, perhaps.
Yeah.
But there are quite a few unfortunate, situations where we've seen with, soda companies and
Yes.
reality stars coming together to pull things together, and it just doesn't feel right. So there's a couple of tells, and just your own intuition of, this doesn't seem right. It's so, we care about all people. Okay, well, that's a
Great.
baseline statement. I hope you would tell me more about what you're doing for
Right.
all different types of people. So those are some of the tells that I've been noticing, and their consistency. Gone are the days, because race wasn't something that we were really talking about in ED&I.
Right.
Um, for many years, the companies felt very good about talking about gender equality. If you feel like 5, 10, maybe, but probably closer to 5 years ago, like that's what we were all focused on, right? Like we wanted women empowerment, which is still super important, but we've pulled back the onion a bit, and now we're really focused on ensuring that all different types of people, all walks of life, are having an opportunity to be represented. Um, so if you still don't see that in their post or their people, or their job descriptions, then you can probably see that that was just for for show, and that they may not really be invested in D&I.
Yes. And I think you can ask politely. Interviews are such a tough time to do that. So I think, as you suggest, doing your research up front and then having your interview question scoped in a polite manner to say, well, I noticed that you had the black square last March, and that, yes, great, you referenced Dr. King. Could you tell me more about what you're working on here? Right? You don't have to come out, I think, guns a-blazing.
Right, right, because
Yeah.
you're still, I mean, it's still an interview.
Yeah. Oh,
Right, and
right.
so there's that, but it is more of a duel. I know, I was with group for almost 9 years, so
Yes.
my interviewing chops had to be a little bit sharpened, if you will,
Yeah.
towards the end of last year. But it's still a dance, and you still want to come across as your best self, and that
Right.
you're someone who's going to be a culture and value add to their organization. So how you approach difficult, or maybe it's not a difficult
Sensitive.
or sensitive, perhaps, yeah, conversations, that's going to help them understand you when you're in front of a client, perhaps, or when you're working with a team. Like, how are you going to approach this?
Right.
Because yes, coming out too hot could be like a little jarring for some folks. So just want to make sure that you're getting your point across in the best ways that represent you, and not being too shy to ask it, but just asking
Right.
it in a way that will be received by your
Right.
audience.
And I think too, we talk about when it feels like there's like tough questions, you practice these before mock
Right.
interview. You practice with your partner, like whatever it takes to make that come out as very professional and poised and calm, but direct. You know that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
I wanted to ask something a little closer to home for you. You changed roles in the last 3 months. So you looked for a job in the middle of a pandemic. You're working with people that you've actually never met in real life. So what was that interview process like, and how has onboarding gone?
It was very similar to this, minus being live on Facebook, so that was nice. But it was a lot of Zoom calls, and meeting different folks, and it was really nice to actually have the video option. A year ago, it would be so taboo to get a Zoom link for an interview. It would be over the phone, or you're in a Polycom, in a conference room with a
Right.
Polycom. So it's been great. My company specifically has done a really great job of sending welcome packages and things to be prepared before I even started. I had my laptop, which I have like my whole thing, my notebooks and my pens and my chapstick. So they welcomed
Right.
me in, and the onboarding process is definitely different, but they've done a great job of making sure that I was scheduled with all different types of folks. But I do miss the opportunity to kind of sit in an agency and see folks walking by and running into someone in the kitchen. So being onboarded in a pandemic is definitely different. But depending on the organization, and that's another great question too to ask, is how are you onboarding your folks? If you're only going to talk to the same
Right.
6 people on your team, and they don't think about the broader culture and how they kind of keep the family together,
Right.
it's may not be a culture that you would be able to thrive in. So that's another great question to dive in. But so far it's been great, and it's nice to know that they value our safety and health, and that
Right.
we're not moving too quickly to get back to a space without the right protocols.
Yeah.
That's great.
I also have a question kind of from what Nancy said, Aisha, on your
Mhm.
first 30, 60 days. A lot of people are coming into new roles or in diversity DEI roles and leading this, and it can be very overwhelming depending on the state of where the company is at, right? What were the first like 2 or 3 things that you did when you started?
Well, it was definitely just meeting folks. My days were back-to-back Zooms, but when you're the new person, it's a little less stressful because it's not like you have a deliverable due in every single
Right. You're
one.
like, I'm new, just learning everything. Yeah.
Yeah, it's more about a conversation, understanding the different departments, understanding the different teams. So that was super important. And one great question that was that I had after every meeting was, can you reference two other people on your team that I might want to meet with that would be helpful in my onboarding? And then, I went from meeting, 12 people to 12 times 3, right? And it just starts to grow. And I got to meet people that I may not work with on the day to day, but their manager thought I could be of help to them. And then we have, Teams chats and different groups that I've tried to get myself involved in. We meet as an agency every month. So it was an opportunity for me to say hello there. But I think, yes, in asking that question after you've been onboarding. So if you're on a team of 7 and you've met everybody, say, is there anybody within, X team that I could just say hello to and understand what they do? You're new, but you would maybe glean that from just seeing them across the hall, or, just running into different people or being at a different meeting. But I think that's super important, is to kind of ensure that you diversify your own onboarding plan if it hasn't been diversified for you.
I love the idea of asking for the 2 referrals,
Mhm.
because you really have to be explicit about that in this
Exactly.
climate.
Exactly. Because
Yeah.
otherwise you won't run into them. Your Zooms
No.
will never cross.
Yeah.
Right, right. So we are coming to the bottom of the half. It sounds like a sports game, doesn't it? And what do you have any final words of guidance for people who are both looking during the pandemic and particularly looking for, for organizations that are more inclusive?
Keep hope alive. It is definitely the market is open. And there's been a lot of postings, especially, we all know Q4 things tend to slow down, but I definitely have seen things ramping up. We're hiring as well. So if there's any roles that you happen to see at hhcc.com that you're interested in, let me know. I'm happy to help. But it's just being open, being ready, being Zoom ready, if you will, for the different interviews, presenting yourselves, doing your research. And then for the ED&I is just, doing research to make sure that companies align with your values. And that's for any role and any topic. If you feel like it's not going to be a fit for you, then it's not worth your time. I know folks get eager and we're looking to make changes and we're nervous, but this is the new norm for right now. So don't feel too intimidated. They'll still be able to get you a laptop and onboarded. So I feel really strongly and positively about the job market, and I think folks can definitely have an opportunity to get into new organizations in 2021.
Great, great,
Love
great. Well, Aisha Losche from Hill Holiday, thank you for joining us with Hangout Habits. In the post show notes, we'll put your contact information, which would be, I think people would love to connect with you and potentially talk more about jobs at Hill Holiday.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. This was lovely.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much.
Hang on one sec. Okay.
Okay. We are